Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's Rural Weekly Preview Live. We're here with Bernie and Deanna. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the trends that we're watching for this week and what we expect to see over the next couple of weeks. And, things that are coming out of the administration. There's so much that's happening all at once. It just feels like there's so much chaos happening. I think it's good for us to just take a minute and talk. But Bernie and Deanna, how are you guys doing? Bernie, how are things in your world? Where do you call in from?
I'm calling in from Capitol Hill, which is flowers are in bloom. I got my echinacea is coming up, so that's good.
Nice. Yeah, a couple more days before the humidity sets in, I bet. And Deanna, you're in New York, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in Brooklyn right now where the humidity has set in.
Oh, nice.
Nice dewy glow we've got going here. This is my look for the summer. But yeah, things I personally I'm investing in corn futures because of all the popcorn I've been popping since last night. Oh my God. Oh, oh.
All right. Well, we will get to the Elon Musk, Donald Trump blow up, and maybe talk a little bit about Joni Ernst. But Bernie, do you want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing in kind of the USDA front?
Yeah, there are two things that we've been tracking. One is office closures on the Doge list. I know there's a lot of bigger news about Doge today, but we're just going to share quickly on that. And then the second is uh, what we heard about a opening up of the grants with the IRA funding and whether that's actually happening or not. So the first on office closures, we're continuing to see members pushing back on these office closures. So there's just a whole batch of offices in Oklahoma that were taken off the Doge list. So we're now up to a total of about 100 offices that were on the kill list that are now back. We hope back live. Congressman Schiff, Senator Schiff just announced that he got a whole bunch of offices opened up in California, mostly in Central Valley Republican voting districts. So here to Senator Schiff and his delegation getting those offices taken off a kill list. It looks like just going through your member with steady drumbeat of constituent services calls is making a difference. So we were really happy to see that. On the grant side, it's not as rosy. We once a month we pull down a whole bunch of data on how grants are doing, and there's three programs we're looking at really closely because these are the ones that went out to farmers and out to rural business. So we got about 37,000 individual farmers, small businesses that had signed a contract with the federal government, either around conservation of land, maybe it's building some solar power or some methane generators, just doing a project for the federal government. So this is a project that they've started, they're out there doing. And what we'd heard about 2 months ago is that block was going to be lifted and that the money was going to start flowing again once Doge and the secretary finished her review. And what we're seeing as we go through the numbers are more, not less, in that we're getting more data. So it turns out there was a backlog of data, but it's still about 1 in 5 of folks who were promised this work are actually getting their funds, and the rest, 4 out of 5, are still waiting, which means that they've already maybe put in some concrete pilings for a solar project or have set aside some land for a project that they just haven't received an answer yet from from the Department of Agriculture. The numbers are bananas. I mean, these kind of can make your eyes gloss over. But yeah, just for the record, we're talking about 3.2 billion in funding that we've been tracking. This isn't paper funding. This is where there's actually a contract with signatures between the government and a farmer or a small business owner. And we're looking at 2.6, 2.7 billion in our most recent numbers that's just sitting there. So it's not even about whether Congress, the president who has the authority. These are contracts, these are promises that aren't being fulfilled. And it's just kind of heartbreaking when I look at it. It's every state of the union, it's every territory.
And can you talk a little bit about how the American public, rural folks, farmers, people in agriculture will start experiencing the effects of this? When is, like, how do they first find out about it? When does that impact on the closure start trickling into everyday life?
The top relationship a rural small agricultural business or a farmer has is with their local office. So COVID already interrupted a lot of that relationship building where they'd find out about this. Uh, but now these offices are closed. The most experienced people have taken the fork, and all of those new employees are in some kind of limbo if they haven't already been laid off. So I don't know where someone's going to go if they had if they were feeling stuck. And a lot of the news is coming out from press releases straight out of the secretary's office. So if you want to know how to reapply for these grants, how to get your grant unstuck, we're not seeing a clear way to do it. This is not as transparent as a lot of programs, um, and we're worried. So maybe you've already put out some cash as a farmer. You've already set aside some land that is not being planted, and now you're finding that there's the cash you were expecting to do that project for a farm on the border on the margin. This has got to be devastating.
And do you think these changes are the result of some Project 2025 master plan, or is this just incompetence?
I'm looking at what's happening with Doge stuff across the board, and I think they just bit off more than they could chew. They thought it'd be easy. They would just say, "Hey, fix your grant and reapply, and we'll get you your money." But when you send home over 1,000 workers in some of these offices, and there's nobody left to do the processing, there's no spigot you can turn right back on. The people who would then release those funds are gone. So I'm getting worried about any farm program that requires hands-on by a federal case manager or lending officer. Uh, that we're going to be looking at backlogs left and right, because while they're unsticking this funding for what we call the REAP and the EQIP programs, was also farm lending. There's also disaster funding. There new programs are coming in, new challenges. So I, I'm worried, man. I'm
Yeah.
really worried.
Well, Lindley's joining us here from Virginia. Virginia is one of the states where we have a lot of people impacted by Doge and the Doge cuts, and we'll talk a little bit about the breakup between Trump and Musk in a second here. But what are you seeing in Virginia? How are the elections going there? Obviously, Virginia is one of the most important set of elections for the 2025. Do you think this is starting to trickle down into voters?
I think so. I think it will. One thing that we're looking at through our organization is just a lot more storytelling. So next week, I intend to interview a few more federal workers, and what we're really looking to hear from them. While we certainly care about their personal struggle in losing their jobs and watching the legacy of the work that they've committed their lives to just sort of crumble, that is one devastating loss. But then there's kind of layers to this. I think the American people would have been far more inclined to fight for these folks, to keep them in these positions if we were hearing stories about like FEMA workers who came to this work because they themselves experienced a devastating flood or tornado, and they didn't want their neighbors in the future down the road to experience that in such a devastating way. And that motivated them to become a FEMA worker. I think we've failed ourselves and this country by not telling the stories of who these people are and what they do for all of us. And while they are hurting at losing their jobs, and I do think that will have some very real impact on the election here in Virginia, it's bigger than that, because what these people were doing was serving every single one of us in this country in some capacity. And so it should be more personal. Like, yes, people focus on the federal workers here in Virginia, makes sense, but the layers there they connect to every single person in this country, and that's the case that we need to make, and keep communicating those stories.
Yeah, one of the things I think we have really struggled with, um, uh, for those of us that support Democrats, oftentimes we get so focused on the policy and we get so focused on the legislation and we get so focused on proving the value through evaluation that gets very complicated. And at the end of the day, it seems like the number one, and number two, metrics that we need to be paying attention to are, do voters know about a program, and um, uh, do they support it? And there's so many programs out there that I think have been developed by very, very, very smart people that have not been socialized at the local level to understand, you know, when you get a facilities grant for a child care facility, it could come through USDA, and that isn't just, money that appears out of nowhere from the money tree, but it's the result of your local economic development district working together with USDA, working together with Congress to come up with a program to make that happen. And so we took those mechanics of democracy, I think, for granted for so many years. But I think moving forward, we're going to have to figure out how we tell these stories, like you're saying, and how we put a human face on it, and how we show people that there's a direct connection um, to their daily lives. And I think that's why we're seeing so much of a response on Medicaid right now, and SNAP, and some of these other programs. Where people know the brand name, they know Medicaid. Medicaid's actually very, very popular, has a huge name recognition. So
Matt, we didn't talk about this ahead of time, but Rural Ground Game actually just finished our first round of calls about Medicaid earlier this week. So we are targeting over 300,000 voters in Virginia who did not show up last year. And we're reaching out to ask them the simple question: are you aware of these potential cuts to Medicaid and cardinal care, which is what we call it here in Virginia on the physical card? And, these are disengaged voters. They didn't show up last year. People were really, really animated by this conversation. We got incredible data. This was a small test set of calls that we made. We made close to 7,000 calls. We had, over 500 conversations with people, and got some incredible notes and some really heartbreaking stories. We even had folks who didn't show up, who had these stories relevant to Medicaid. And we even had somebody volunteer to join us for our next phone bank because she's so upset and scared that she wants to join us in making more people aware. But some key things that we also are seeing in the data from those calls is that, yes, some people associated these cuts with Trump, some with Republicans more broadly. The majority of folks, over 60%, couldn't say. They don't know who's responsible for these cuts. And there's certainly a lot of folks who don't believe the cuts are real. Some folks who are not on Medicaid, not fully understanding that, if they live in a rural community, they're still going to be impacted. They're going to lose their rural health clinic. They're going to lose their local nursing homes and hospitals potentially. So we've got a lot of, we've dropped the ball on a lot of key communication, but the opportunity to do that is now. And I'm seeing a lot of volunteer energy and effort and willingness to try new things and to be frontline communicators here. And Bernie, I promise you, I looked at your spreadsheet just earlier today. I really did, because, we're like the impacts are coming, and I like rely on people like you, quite frankly, who know far more about, just when the pain is going to come to people. And, you're just looking at these farm names, and I'm thinking kind of in the same way you are, like, what have these folks already committed to, with the expectation that the commitment the government made to them was going to be honored. And it's hard to wrap your mind around what this will feel like. But I'm really glad you brought up the Medicaid and SNAP cuts, and we're going to continue those calls twice a week, and hopefully to build beyond that. And that's the project. I'll be in contact with you to see there might be some ways for y'all to connect in there as well.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think that's exactly what we're seeing on multiple fronts. One is, polling that we've done in the past showed that when good things happen in rural America, rural voters tend to assume it's Republicans who are behind it, because oftentimes it's the Republicans at ribbon cutting ceremonies. And so people sort of associate, a new school, a new facility with local Republican leadership. And then when bad things happen, people assume it's the Democrats, because, there's no Democrats oftentimes in the small town or rural community defining the narrative. So I think that's one piece of it. And then also the energy on Medicaid. I think that's really fantastic to hear in Virginia, because I think Virginia is where everybody's paying attention right now. You guys are doing like fantastic work there. And I think that what happens in Virginia is really going to set the narrative for where we go for 2026 with the midterms. Deanna, you mentioned the popcorn that you were popping, and we've been talking about Doge. How do you think this Trump, Elon Musk feud, do you think that has any impact on rural politics?
It's hard to say because there's so much camp finding where people are trying to figure out what camps they're in. Are they actually in the Elon camp? That tends to be that tech bro kind of thing. What's going to happen when Peter Thiel and Curtis Yarvin come in and mix things up again? One thing I did want to add before we go on to Elon Musk is that working with the Poster Project, we did release new graphics this week. We have new USDA graphics as well as Veterans Affairs graphics. There's a big protest today, actually, all over the country for supporting veterans. And I was just looking, with what Lindley was talking about, and Bernie also, in Virginia alone, it says here that $51 million are still owed to 570 farms in Virginia. And I mean, what are they going to do? So yes, absolutely, we need to tie this around the necks of the people responsible, hopefully. But yes, investing in my corn futures, so I'm popping that popcorn for that Elon Musk Donald Trump breakup. I honestly don't have a lot to say about what the ultimate impact is, but boy, howdy, was it fun to sit there and watch. Oh, yeah. I needed that. So
yeah, I agree that people are trying to find their where they fit on all this. I do feel like, and maybe I'm a little bit controversial in saying this, I don't think Donald Trump is going to be on the ballot in 29 or 28, whenever the next election is. He has to convince people that he's thinking about running and he has some viable pathway. JD Vance runs and then steps down and then he steps in, because as soon as he admits that he's a lame duck president, and that he's not running again, the entire Republican coalition is going to unravel, because you have the Elon Musk wing, which is so different and at odds with Steve Bannon. You probably saw Steve Bannon came out and said, now that Elon Musk said that Trump should be impeached or should be investigated for impeachment, there's no coming back from that. So now Steve Bannon is at war with Elon Musk, and Peter Thiel and JD Vance are very close, as we all know. And, so I think that Republicans are very quickly going to start stepping into a 2028 posture where they're all trying to, make a play for their Game of Thrones move, on the mega throne. So I don't know if it's going to have a direct impact on rural voters either, but I do think that we need to start thinking about what is the future without Donald Trump. And we need to start thinking about, how do we not rehash out all of the Donald Trump years, and how do we just move forward, right? Like, there's a ton of Trump voters that are frustrated that billionaires are getting a tax cut and their Medicaid's being cut. And we don't need to go back and rehash out who was right about their vote in 2024 or 2020 or 2016, but just figuring out how we can move forward. And I think the next couple of years are going to be fascinating as we try and figure out, like,
that's one word for it.
Where are we all aligned? Because, I'm not sure Elon Musk would make for a good Democrat, for those that are trying to recruit him back into the Democratic Party. But I think there's going to be a real conversation about the role of billionaires in politics.
We can only hope that it actually finally happens. I mean, how long have we been talking about this? One of the things that I'm working on with Jim Hightower right now is we're working on reviving our former print newsletter. It will still be online only. It will not come back in print, much to the chagrin of many of our readers. But we are going to be deploying our first issue of the new lowdown to tell people, explain populism to people, and to explain that this is a long tradition of our people, and explain why it gets associated with right-wing extremism when it, the actual populism is very far from it, how it got tagged with xenophobia, racism, all of the things. But it's fundamentally about people with money having too much power. And if we can get that across, if we can get that through, if we can bring people in, when people talk about a Big Ten, I get a little scared. I get a little worried about choice, about trans rights. I get a little worried about all this stuff. But when we talk about a Big Tent that says that is we support these things unequivocally, and we are against corporate power and against the the investment in money in politics, then I think we can get it together.
Yep. Yeah, well, Abraham Lincoln used to call USDA the People's Agency, I think, right? So there's a long, proud history, I think, in rural communities of people kind of moving in the direction of the government. So hopefully we can continue down that path. Anything else that we want to talk about on this week's preview? Anything else that you all are watching out for next week? What should we be paying attention to, either in Virginia or kind of in DC or?
Well, I did just want to quickly say, I can't believe I forgot to say this, but Deanna, we used the poster project graphics are part of our volunteer guidance for our phone calls for Medicaid, and we're building a script on Snap and that as well. So you didn't realize it, but you're actually collaborating with us here in
No,
Virginia.
that's exactly. I mean, we love to hear it, and that's exactly why we designed the poster project in the way that we did. That people can pick it up and run with it, and just have something to use. That's if you need that URL again, it is posterproject.us, and it thrills me to hear that. So thank you. Makes my heart feel good.
I can't believe I
No.
forgot to mention that. But one thing that kind of came up today that I think it might be sort of weirdly relevant to the Elon Trump chaos. We're still recruiting school board candidates here in Virginia. So our filing deadline is June 17th. We're almost there. We're in a great spot, I think, to have Democrats on the ballot in all 100 delegate districts here in Virginia. Truly historic accomplishment. But we are still at work recruiting down ballot. In my own local school board, there's been chaos for the last 4 years. We have a far-right school board that has banned books, that has attacked trans kids, and done all the Moms for Liberty city elders type of stuff. Well, now we're approaching this election year, and my school board district is up for re-election, and it seems like the chaos that this particular member has created in the community is one that even local Republicans are now not in support of. And I mention that just to say as a general theme, because we talk to school board candidates and folks across rural Virginia about these school board issues. And it seems like the chaos agents, the ones that are really creating a tremendous amount of chaos in these communities, are actually starting to get some rejection and pushback, even from their local Republican parties. I don't want us to be in a mindset where we sit back and wait for them to fail. Like, I join you in like celebrating this like idiotic spectacle that we've all seen. But for all of us to be held hostage by the egos of two billionaires who, yes, I'm glad that they are busy scratching each other's eyes out so they can take a break from hurting the American people with these catastrophic cuts to fundamental programs we rely on. But I hope we're also like focused on, what do we build now? What are we offering people? Like, what is that hopeful future that we are participating and putting together? That's really hard to imagine in these really challenging times, but we can't forget to do that. We can't forget to offer that up to people, because I do agree with Matt. Like, I think there will be a time where this kind of unravels. We have to be ready for that. And we have to be ready with a hopeful, actionable, accessible vision that people can sink their teeth into, so that we can build that credibility and trust back. So we should laugh and like dig into the distraction and recognize that maybe people don't love chaos, from the school board right on up to the highest levels. But then what is our part in this, and who are we going to be?
I love that point about the vision as well. The better vision. There's been some talk about the abundance stuff in the Ezra Klein abundance world. Hamilton Nolan, I'll post it in the comments on the video on Substack. Hamilton Nolan had a great post about what is centrism and what is happening with centrism in DC. And it's such a huge opportunity for us to bring the real vision of our communities to the forefront. So huge opportunity.
I think that's right. I think we're at while it feels like we are all stuck in this triage mode, I do think we need to start thinking longer term about where we're going and what the positive direction is for our communities. So I think we'll touch on that more next time, but Thanks everybody for joining us on this week's preview, and we'll see you next week.